What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 2 of the Procedurally Generated show. My name is Chris Weber. I am joined by John Carson.
Hello.
How are you today, John?
Oh, I'm great. Today, the day that we're recording this is the release date of the Xbox Series X and Series S. I currently am holding 2 Series X's.
He sure is. I have 0.
Do you want one?
I do want one. It's good thing
I can't seem to get rid of this other one.
It's a good thing we've already struck a deal.
Everyone wants PS5s. Everyone that I've asked is like, hey, I don't need a Series X right now, but if you've got another PS5, I'll take that.
And that was my exact mentality. In fact, you might have just said what I said verbatim until the FOMO set in.
Dude, the FOMO's real.
Hey, you still got that Xbox chilling?
Yeah.
I'll take it.
And I'm like, hey, so the Xbox that you said you wanted, why don't you go with the bigger one?
Yeah, and he also talked me out of getting the Series S and getting your Series X. So
it doesn't have to be my Series X. It just has to be like if you're presented with 2 options and one is clearly superior and like I guess the price difference is significant, but like the power difference between the 2 consoles and like being able to use discs is like the disc thing is smaller than it used to be.
Yeah.
But I like having that option to just play whatever whenever. I'm starting to sound like Shakira. But like especially for like this show, I mean, I've purchased a few older games already. It'd be nice to have a disc drive to pop some of those games into. Also, like if you go onto the Microsoft Store, sometimes digital games for like 360 or Xbox, or original Xbox, are cheaper on disc than they are digitally. So, I mean, you have more flexibility with it.
They take up more space. Physically.
Oh yeah, physically. I'm like on the hard drive. No, sir. No,
that's not. You've been living a lie if that's what you think. Well, so the disc thing, you know, I've moved on. So the disc thing, I can get by without that. But you brought up a point that I hadn't thought about: the 4K being part of the Series X, where the Series S has the 1440. We have a 4K TV that has yet to have a 4K signal touch it in any way. And sure. That's what sold me. I'm like, you know what? We have that thing out there. I've never seen what it's capable of. The PlayStation 5 would maybe be, assuming I get one.
You will when you get a PS5.
Right.
For sure. But
Game Pass. I just,
Game Pass is huge, and
it's just, it doesn't work on my computer. So it's, I need a Game Pass machine, I guess.
Which you do need to fix at some point.
I do. I was going to, I was going to wipe my hard drive a couple of days ago and start from scratch. And I didn't, for no good reason.
Yeah, you said that was a Sunday job. I asked you on Monday, like, oh, so how'd reformatting your computer go?
Yeah.
I didn't do it.
I was all about it, and then it came time to do the thing, and I'm like, boy, that's a lot of work.
Yeah, like my decision to buy the Series X or either of the new Microsoft consoles weren't necessarily new games that were coming out. Since Microsoft is releasing all of their games on PC as well, I have a pretty beefy PC. I could play them pretty well on there.
Yeah.
But the enhancements to games with unlocked frame rates or that might have had issues just running in the last generation is huge. Like, I'm super into the idea of playing Monster Hunter at a brisk 60 frames per second. And whether that has like resolution scaling or not, I'm not sure. But I know that the performance is definitely enhanced with it. So it's games like that I'm excited to return to, because there was a trend in the last generation where people would cram as much as they could onto a console, and it might not run well or perfectly. And not everything needs to run perfectly. That's not Like there's a lot of things that go into games. Making games are hard. Is a hard business.
So I've heard. I've never tried, but
Yeah,
it sounds like it. The first game that I'm gonna boot up is Forza Horizon. That is
yeah.
one of my all time favorite series. I played it on PC for a while when my Game Pass stopped working. I have not been able to play it since, and I think that game is going to look even better. So I am.
And
I'm
I believe
excited.
that's one like the Forza Horizon 4 or the
Yeah,
original. Okay.
yeah, 4.
It seems like that one got an SNX upgrade. So
Nice.
uh,
SNX, is that where we're is that what it's been
S
shortened
and
to?
X.
SNX. Okay, all right. Well,
I don't know.
yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's the one thing that I'll never love is Microsoft's naming conventions.
Yeah, I don't think it's as bad as other people do, but I could see how people could be confused with the Xbox One
I
S.
actually had to message you in Discord and have you explain the difference to me,
That's true.
like the old I am.
So
It's what's the
what's the
difference
X?
between the two?
Well,
God,
one has a disk drive.
that's the first time I felt like I'm completely out of touch now. I'm losing it, but that's okay.
Yeah. Well,
I have you to keep me in line.
now you don't have to be confused anymore.
That's true. Thank God.
And also, we don't need to worry about these newfangled consoles. We have what 100,000 games to play
We
now.
do. Yeah. It turns out our attention has recently been focused on some of the older stuff. So,
Yeah,
um,
sure has.
we'll we could probably just maybe jump into that. What do you think? Should we? I
Yeah, I
mean,
think
it's
so.
we talked about maybe talking about the snowstorm. It's snowing. It's Minnesota. These
It
things
is
happen.
Minnesota. It was 70 last week, and now
It was.
it's
We had
snowing.
record high temperatures 3 days ago, 2 days
Yeah,
ago,
it
and
was really
now
nice.
there's a chance we have a record snowfall. So
Love it.
it just never surprises me.
Normally at this point of the show, we would be going into our community segment. Currently, as it's being, it is week 2. We currently don't have any community emails to read, so
Nowhere to go but up.
we would like to encourage all of our listeners to if you have questions you want to ask, it doesn't even have to be about the games that we spoke of last in the last episode, but if you do have anything that you want to talk about with the games that we discussed today or last week's games or games that we cover in the future, please send us an email at pgshowinbox@gmail.com.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then you can also reach out to us on our Patreon for Procedurally Generated,
Yeah,
which
we
will be
have one of
linked in
those.
the show notes. And then we have our Twitter as well at PG_show. So by all means, reach out in one of those things if you have any questions, comments, concerns, corrections, thoughts on your day, whatever you
Mhm.
got, we'll take it. So, and then just to touch on one more thing before we get going. If you like what you're hearing, if you enjoy this show, please do us a solid. Give us a review, preferably a 5-star, but hey, I won't tell you what to do. It helps us reach new viewers. We are actually blown away with the support that we have gotten so far with
It's been
episode 0 and
wonderful.
episode 1. We just crossed the 100 listens, I guess, threshold,
Yeah.
100 plays. And I think that's phenomenal. I mean, to more, the podcasts that have been around for a while, that the people that have done these things before, that might seem like that might seem like a smaller milestone, but it is a milestone. And to be honest, when you're starting something fresh and you're putting your content out there and you're, doing this for potential, strangers that you've never met before, it is a big task, and 100 viewers honestly can feel like Everest. So thank you guys for the support so far. We have been thrilled to death to see the listens. Hopefully we can get some community interaction going here over time, but we know that this is this will be a long thing. It's not a sprint or anything. So we're going to continue to own our craft. We're going to continue to get better and ask that you guys, support us just the same.
Mhm.
Cool.
Cool.
All right. Well, this is a shorter intro than we had last week. We had a lot to talk about last week. That
It's
show
true.
got to be pretty long. We're going to keep it a little bit more trim, I think, tonight.
Yeah.
In fact, I
Listen, I've
think
got 2 Xboxes to boot up.
that's true. Yes,
Let's
he's.
run through
If
this.
you could just get mine all set up and
Yeah,
stuff,
let
that'd be
me. Can I have your
fantastic.
password to your
Yeah.
Microsoft account, please?
Perfect.
Is your credit card on there? No.
Oh man, you can't have that. But let's. Why don't we just jump? I mean, do you have anything else you want to go over, or should we jump right into game number one?
Um, I guess any quick things that you've been playing the rest of the week?
Yeah, actually,
Just super quick.
I had my 1 year Twitch anniversary
Oh
this week,
yeah,
so that was
it's been
fun.
a long week,
It
so
has been a long week. There's been a
that's
lot of
definitely a highlight
things.
of it.
Yeah, that was a good time. That was a Saturday, uh, almost 12-hour stream. The goal was to go 12 hours, but again,
Yeah,
I'm an old who never stays up past 10:30 and had to cash out at like 11:30. So
I saw that. I'm like, he said 12:45. It's
yeah,
11:30. He's gone.
I did my best, but
Which is fair, man. You did a great job that day. You finished Amnesia Rebirth.
I did. Yes, I wrapped
That's
that game
awesome.
up. And I had a lot of fun with that game.
Oh, good.
It was it, when I noticed as I got into the second half as I was playing through the day, I thought I would finish it a lot earlier, but I was not in any hurry to put it down. I was very much okay with where things were going,
Hmm.
and I thought it wrapped up pretty good. I enjoyed that game. That's the first Amnesia game that I've beaten. So whether or not it pushes me to try and finish the other Amnesia games, we'll see.
Yeah,
But I was pleased with that one.
that's awesome.
Yeah, we wrapped that up. We did a little, did some community games, did some Rocket League, did some Warzone, and then started up World of Final Fantasy.
Yeah,
So that's my main focus right now on Twitch. Will be World of Final Fantasy.
that
So
might have a slight connection to another game that we talk about later.
it could.
Just a tiny
Yeah,
connection.
yeah. We're gonna. It's actually more than you might realize.
Well,
Um,
yeah.
the but yeah, no, it was good. I mean, it was a good time. Other than that, I don't think I had too much else going on. What about you? What did you play this week?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I played Magic. That's gonna be my answer every every week.
Just
Um, and then I played some of the games that we're gonna be talking about today. Uh, Other than that, I think my week was just staring at the news a lot. So we won't
yeah,
go into all that, but um, yeah, I mean it's the
it
election was
has
last
been
week.
a long week.
There's a lot of counting of ballots.
Yeah,
So wanting to stay up to date with all of that.
yeah. This
Uh,
long week might take months. No
but
joke.
also
So
like knowing that this week I'm gonna have 2 new consoles to play and a ton of new games. I was kind of taking it easy last week, so I am fully charged up and ready to dive into all the next gen goodness.
yeah, yeah. And I am now that I know that I'm getting a Series X on day 2. So
Well, we'll see.
yeah, assuming the
We'll
snow
see.
doesn't. It's we're supposed
No,
to get a lot of snow. So
I was gonna say we'll see how your performance is during this podcast, and then we will see if I
you're gonna, I
agree
have to
to give
earn
it to
it. Oh man, this was not agreed
pressure's
upon
on.
terms.
C Dub.
All right. What say we throw out game number one?
Sure.
Sound good?
Yeah.
All right.
It's,
So this game is a part of a long-standing franchise. This particular game released on the PlayStation 3. We are talking about Tomb Raider Underworld. What pops into your mind when you hear Tomb Raider Underworld, John?
I mean, really just Lara Croft in general.
Okay, that is
It's
about
I
as
mean,
far as I got to.
I mean, it is it's a long running franchise. This is a game that is the third in a trilogy. I guess that's redundant, but
Well,
it is.
it
It's
needed
the
to have a
final game in a
position in the
trilogy.
trilogy. Yeah.
For a reboot of the Tomb Raider franchise on the 360 and PS3.
Right. So give you a little background on Tomb Raider Underworld. Developed by Crystal Dynamics, Crystal D for the cool kids.
As they call it.
Yeah. Published by Eidos, and also Warner Brothers Interactive Entertainment. This is what we would call a third-person action game, and released in 2008. Now, it came out on a lot of platforms. One stands out that I completely forgot about, which is great. I'm gonna touch on it in just a second. But we got it says it was released on browsers, which
Huh?
I probably should have looked into that. Now that I'm actually
Well,
reading that out loud.
what's it like a not GameFly?
Oh, I
There's
guess
some sort of like a
maybe.
Gaikai
Well, okay.
or
So it was also Macintosh, PlayStation
yeah,
2, PlayStation 3, Wii, Windows, Xbox 360. But the one that I skipped over, it was also released on Live. Do you remember on Live?
yeah.
Yeah,
That would be the browser one probably, huh?
yeah. I wonder if they're one and the same. I didn't for some reason browser didn't jump out to me
That's what I was
until I
trying to
just
think
read
of.
it
I'm
out
like,
loud.
on live, that's a ghost of the gaming past that like
Right. Should add that to the list
should
on the
have
odd
been a huge
chance.
name considering the moves that everyone's taking to cloud gaming right now.
Right. Ahead of its
It'd
time.
be
Ahead of its
way ahead
time.
of its time. Did someone buy them out?
What did they? I don't know.
I know like Gaikai was a similar service. Sony ended up buying them, and is part of the whole PlayStation Now ecosystem.
Yeah, I'd be
But on live, maybe that might be a homework assignment for our listeners or for us.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe dedicate like a couple minutes to what was on Live. Um, yeah,
I'm gonna look while you
that
talk
is.
about Tomb Raider Underworld.
Yeah. And then there were two versions of this game. There was the standard version, and there was a limited edition version. And then later down the road, it was actually included in a Tomb Raider trilogy, which included Tomb Raider Anniversary and Tomb Raider Legend, I believe.
Yep, which were the prequels to this.
Yeah.
Anniversary was a full on a remake of the original Tomb Raider, I believe.
Okay.
And Legend was a kind of an alternate sequel to that game, and then this was building upon what Legend brought. Sorry, I'm still looking at online stuff. It's fascinating me.
Perfect. If you find anything worth commenting on, by all means, let it go.
No, I clicked on a Wikipedia entry for OnLive, or no, I guess it was OnLive Micro Console. I clicked on Micro Console and it brought up the Ouya. I'm like, where did I go wrong? What did I click? Sorry, we are off topic severely.
Yeah. Well, again,
I
on
apologize.
Live will do that to you.
This is my brain. Like that's
Well, circling back to Tomb Raider.
mhm,
As it relates to like my history with Tomb Raider, I
mhm.
think I played the original one a long time ago, but I didn't really feel it. I didn't beat it or anything like that. But I hadn't played one since I played the 2013 reboot of the reboot. Um, I enjoyed that game quite a bit, but I never played the two that followed that one. So we took a look. I took a look and I found Underworld, and this is still active. So I'm doing you guys a public service here. If you have any interest in Tomb Raider Underworld, you can get it for less than $1 right now. It is. I found it for 98 cents
I wish
on
I would have known.
Fanatical.
Yeah, I like Fanatical.
Yeah, Fanatical is good. Good for getting cheap gaming bundles. But I found it through another website, which I'm going to plug here because I think that if you are a PC gamer, you should absolutely use this website. It's called isthereanydeal.com. If you're looking for a game on your PC, this is my go-to. I go there first. Now they're not sponsoring this channel. We are no way affiliated with them, but we're here trying to do you guys a service, and not checking that website before you buy your PC games you would be doing yourself a disservice. I will say that. So yeah, I bought Tomb Raider Underworld for 98 cents. So that
Yeah, I
was
think about it
that.
for like $10 on Steam.
Yeah, I told John that hey, it's for 98 cents. He's like, oh, cool.
Like,
I just
well,
paid 10 times that. That's exciting. I'm very happy for you.
good job, Chris.
But yeah,
I almost
so
bought it again on Xbox just to see how it ran on the Series X. Like,
you have a
but
problem.
this is $20.
You better be careful. I will come and take both of your Xboxes away because you can't control
No,
yourself.
no, I need
But
it.
that would have been when it so getting Underworld for 98 cents this was my first time booting Underworld up
Yeah.
at all.
What
So
what are your first impressions? of Underworld.
It's funny. I'm reading my notes here, and I have one that I just stopped typing halfway through. So I don't know what I was going to talk about there. We'll get rid of that. My first thoughts on Tomb Raider Underworld. Only being able to reflect back on the original Tomb Raider,
Hmm.
and then being able to pull from my experiences with the 2013 version, I felt
Yeah,
like this was a very in the middle of those two games.
it really is.
Yeah, the it's it's got better controls than the original Tomb Raider.
Yes.
The camera is it does a better job, but it doesn't have like the cinematic qualities of the 2013. When you turn the camera, I mean that camera whips.
Yeah.
Um, in fact, there were times when I was playing in the first level where I actually kind of had to look away from the screen because it was so jarring that I honestly thought I was making myself a little nauseous. And
Yeah.
I'd never gotten sick at a game before. I don't know if it's just because I was playing on my PC monitor and it was very close to my face and my brain just wasn't taking it well. But
Right.
um, yeah, I mean, I played about halfway through the first level, got to the tutorial, got a little bit of the story set up. I actually went back and watched. They had something included in the trailers section or whatever for it was just previously on, and it was no joke, like a minute long, trying to
Oh,
recap
that's all it was?
the first two games. Yeah, I was like kind of like ready to settle in and like, okay, let's
Because,
get me
like,
caught up in the
I
story.
was loading it up and it's like, go into the menus and watch the previously on segment. Like, cool.
Yeah,
That's like a great way to catch you up. I didn't, I ended up not watching that, but if it's only like a minute to like catch you up on Tomb Raider, other than like, she's rich, she raids tombs, she shoots tigers.
well, that right there. You've taught me more about this game than the previously on did by saying those three things. I watched that previously on and I had no idea what was happening. I don't know if they must have put it there for somebody who's played Anniversary and Legend.
I guess
I
just
did
as
not.
like a quick reminder. You'd
Yeah,
think that
I
you'd want people who are like brand new to the series to like be onboarded easily.
right. They had. I mean, they were throwing characters at me that I didn't know who they were.
Hmm.
It was. I mean, I would recommend you watch it and see if you get anything out of it. But I watched it and I was just like, well, I could have just not watched that and been just fine. So
No, I think I'm more invested in like current Tomb Raider than than
yeah,
this weird middle section in the Lara Croft history. Which,
right.
like, I read the synopsis of this game and it sounds actually pretty interesting.
It does. Yeah,
Having to deal with some Norse mythology, some other ancient
Mayan and Hindu
mythology.
also
Oh, it
included.
is Mayan and Hindu. Okay.
Yeah,
I know that we're dealing with like Helheim and Thor's hammer and Thor's gauntlets and
yeah,
all
yeah.
kinds of recognizable Norse mythology.
Yeah. So I mean, as John said, this is the third game in the Legend timeline. There's the original, there's the Legend, and then there's the I don't know what they call this one if it's the rebooted. Those are the three. So the Anniversary, Legend, and Underworld are the three main titles, but there are three spin-off titles that are included in that timeline as well, which I thought I had written down. I can grab those real quick. Uh,
I don't
if you have anything to throw in there, John, go
know.
ahead.
Like, are the other ones like the Temple of Osiris and
Yes.
um, Guardian of Light?
Yeah,
Those are
actually,
like the isometric action games, which are actually super fun. Like,
they're like the Diablo-like almost.
yeah, and they're multiplayer and like different characters will have different skills. Like Lara has like a rope. Another character that she's with might have like a shield, and you can use the shield to like boost Lara up onto different platforms. Or
Okay.
there's a lot of cool puzzle solving stuff
And I might have
with
misspoke.
the
It looks
different
like there's
characters.
two of those spin-off games, not
Yep,
three.
yep. Oh, they're really good, and I hope they come up on the list at some point.
Yeah, and then the new timeline is called the Survivor timeline. So,
Yes.
um, but so apparently, again, I don't have the complete lore of Tomb Raider. Again,
Hmm.
I'm actually pretty.
Here's the lore. She's rich. Her dad was an adventurer. She's chasing her dad's legacy. And then there's Indiana Jones things that happen. So there's always some sort of supernatural element.
Well, so here's the thing, though. You say that, but so that's for the Legend timeline. But apparently, they changed some of her background for the Legend timeline as opposed to the original. The stuff that I found was so in the original, Laura just wanted to go do her own thing because she was tired of like high class, high society living.
Sure.
But apparently in the Legend timeline, they kind of scrub that away and just say that she's obsessed with this because her father was an archaeologist, and that just instilled in her the want to do this. And then there's the story around her mother going missing in this
Yeah.
in this timeline.
And I feel like they played around with her dad a bit in the original series,
Okay.
but it's been so long and I barely played those that I don't recall completely. I
Okay.
guess if those ever come up, we will we'll find out.
Yeah, the other thing is, and I think that this is pretty front and center with the whole history of what makes Lara Lara, but there's a plane crash that takes place, and apparently they change timelines on when that happens. One of them happens when she's 9, which I think is
The
the
original,
the
right?
original is when it's younger.
I think so.
Well, okay, then that's what I thought I read too, but then in the previously on, it does cover a little bit of that plane crash, and she's very young. She's definitely not
Oh,
21
maybe it is
like
this
what I
one.
was reading. So
Yeah.
maybe the Legend one has all I'm trying to say is that what they did is they messed with the lore a little bit between which is it's a reboot. It's a
The Lara
reimagining.
lore.
Yeah, the Lara lore. I like that.
Please teach me about the Lara lore.
Um, and then this game also was the first game in the series that used motion capture for whoever was playing Laura. So they actually had an Olympic caliber gymnast do the motion cap for her. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. One thing also technically about this game was I believe it technically uses a different engine than the previous 2 games.
Okay.
And the engine was later used on Deus Ex Human Revolution.
Oh, that would make sense because Eidos was in charge of both those franchises, right? Didn't they publish both of them?
Yes. Yep.
I can see how they could
They sure
share things
did.
like that. Okay.
Um, but it seems like the development of this game specifically took a little bit longer at the beginning. They did have a longer alpha phase. And while they were doing that, like this game was supposed to be like their first next gen title. This was released in what, 2008 or so.
Yes.
So that's 2 years after the PS3.
That sounds
Correct.
right. 2006 for
Yeah.
PS3. Yeah.
So I think this was like their first one that they weren't splitting generations. So they wanted to update the engine, make Lara a little bit more fluid, like you mentioned, have someone actually mocap her and have her have more realistic actions and animations. So actually getting this game into development, like it's a full proper development, took a little bit longer to get those basics going. And that's according to a post-mortem from Crystal Dynamics, Eric Lindstrom, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
there's
referenced.
just an article on Gamma Sutra about it. So.
Okay. Nice. I actually I referenced it's called Tomb Raider Underworld Beneath the Surface, which is like a developer um kind of a developer notebook sort of a thing, but it was pre-release. So it was that you could tell there was a little hype like this is why you should play this game as
Oh,
opposed to
sure,
like a
yeah,
breakdown of
a little bit more PR than post-mortem stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So one thing I found so this is we're talking about the PlayStation 3 release, but obviously this released on several different consoles. The Wii release did have a game breaking bug with it.
Oh,
Um,
weird.
and
Okay.
as you know, the Wii did not have I mean it had no interneting, no patching or anything like that, right? So to fix the issue, Eidos actually made available some public saves that could be loaded onto an SD card. So then you could use those to continue from beyond the game breaking
Jeez.
point.
The
which
Wild
I thought
West of
was
the
a
Wii.
cool throwback to how these kind of situations used to be handled, and not really that
Yeah.
long ago. I mean, 2008.
I don't think there's anything that like I don't think that could have worked before that time.
No, I think I remember hearing things about a couple Game Boy games or something that had issues.
Oh, did you have to go to like a Toys R Us and hook up a link cable to their setup and
Yeah,
like
I wish I could remember. I've heard people talk about an old. I don't remember. I wish I'll look and see if I can find the ref, because it's even another. It might be like a full back in the 90s even when
yeah.
this took place.
Oh,
I wish I could remember the name of the
probably.
game. Bummers.
Well,
Um, but yeah, I mean, so you did you? I know you were going to try to get it going. You had some issues
yeah,
with your
yeah.
controller
So
inputs.
yeah, so
What
I'm in
happened there?
let's this is this week's lesson of John's an idiot.
Oh yes, I love this. This is
So
reoccurring section. I
over
love
the
it.
weekend I bought a PlayStation 5 DualSense controller because I wanted to have a second one to play multiplayer games with my wife. And I'm like, well, I'm gonna hook this up to my PC since it's not gonna work on anything else. Let's load up a real game with it. I need to play Tomb Raider for for the podcast. Let's boot that up. And the right stick on it was just like bugging out. The camera was going everywhere. It felt like I was using a mouse, but like with the analog stick, just going in every direction that I didn't want it to go. Tried it today with the with the Xbox One X controller, and it worked fine for the most part. I just needed to tweak a couple of settings that I had adjusted when I had the DualSense on, and it was fine. Um, that said, I don't think this game controls well, like at all. It is better than the original Tomb Raiders, where it was like tank controls for Lara. Jumping is I never understood jumping in the original games. I actually think that the original games are like super bad for controls.
Yeah, I remember the jump was
Um,
either like straight up or straight out a certain amount, like a
or
certain distance. Like,
like a strafing jump that you do like a side flip.
yeah,
It's yeah. I remember playing Tomb Raider Chronicles. I think that was the only one I ever owned. But like playing the first level was just it's just a hellish jumping puzzle that was just supposed to be a tutorial. I just remember it like I played it like for 2 hours and then just dropped it completely. Um, like going from that to this, it is night and day, and you could definitely see that they wanted Lara's movements to be more fluid and more acrobatic and easier to control. But like going from playing the Survivor series.
uh-huh.
Is that what you said they were
Yeah,
called? Yeah,
yep,
so the Tomb Raider reboot from 2013 ish.
yeah,
And then Rise of the Tomb Raider. I never played Shadow of the Tomb Raider, but like playing those and going back to this, it's another night and day change. It's just so much better to control.
yeah.
Um,
That's what I thought too. I thought that the playing the 2013 version just kind of exacerbated the problems with this middle version, but then
yeah,
this version, that middle version, is just that much farther ahead of the
right.
original. So it's, if we didn't have the 2013 version, we might look at this and be like, yeah, I can see how this got, this is a lot better. But it's, now you're judging against the next best thing, and it's like, oof, this did not age well.
Yeah. And it seems like in this one they added like a grappling hook. I don't know if they had it in the previous two. I didn't really look into it, but
I
you have like
think
a
that was new based on the documentary that or
okay,
I think
and
she had it, but they added functionality to it, like climbing.
yeah.
Um,
So like the first thing you do is like rip a door off its hinges, to escape like a room that's engulfed in fire. Which is a cool idea, and then they have you like hook it up to a ring to swing over a fiery chasm. But the first time I did that, Lara just kind of like swung into the fire and died.
oh, I'm so glad
And
I'm not
like
the
did
only one who did that then.
yeah, no, like I hooked it up. I'm like, okay, I guess it's I'm grappled. Um I guess I'll try to jump, and it just jumped straight in to
It
the
was like too
fire.
much line out and just
Yeah,
horribly misjudged. So I don't
there
want to tell
and
you how
there's
long I spent in that first hallway section trying to figure out how to jump that first
it's
chasm.
it's very awkward, and
Yeah,
it's not well taught to you.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I only made it through the tutorial of this, um, and
I got to.
I
Sorry, go
oh
ahead.
no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I got a little beyond that. I made it to the first level. I watched the little cutscene that took place, and then I dove in the ocean. And I shot some sharks.
Nice.
Yeah, just murdered those sharks.
Just, thus,
But
Maneater was born.
and that's yes, this was the distant prequel. Got shot by Lara Croft, and anyways, um, but if you so a couple like cool additional things. Well, at least one cool additional thing. In the book 1001 video games you must play before you die. This game is included. It is one of the top 1001 video games you must play before you die, according to
When
that
was that
book,
book published? I just need to know.
2010. So at that point,
Okay,
this game was
so
relatively
yeah,
new.
yeah, we didn't have
I don't think it makes
games
that
like
list.
Fortnite then. We didn't,
Yeah,
which would now take up a spot on
you
that
might
list.
not see Tomb Raider Underworld
Uh,
in the 2020 version of that book.
is that a ranked list?
No, I think they just
Oh,
throw them in
okay.
there. Might be
That would have been trouble.
alphabetical.
Like, we have 1,001 games. What's number one?
Yeah,
What's number what's number two? Is it just like Mario,
I think Polygon did that
Zelda?
a couple years ago,
They did.
like top
They
1,000
did.
games or something.
Yeah,
That is an
that's
undertaking.
so tough, and that's always just like you're just gonna get crap for it no matter what.
Oh yeah, I have
You're
panic
not gonna
attacks when
please
I'm trying to figure out
anybody.
my top 10. That's
Yeah.
just not. I can't do it.
Be like Dan Reichert and rank all the Marios.
That was cool.
They're always fun.
But yeah, I don't know. Do you have any other? I mean, I was going to go to the critical reception. Anything else that you saw? Any cool nuggets of information about this game?
No, not really. It was kind of I found it a little bit harder to find some stuff on this game, mainly because it is the third game in a trilogy. It's the last game before. This is actually technically the last Tomb Raider game that was published under IDOS. That is a fun fact, actually.
Yeah, there you
This
go.
was right before they were purchased by Square Enix.
Oh, okay.
So there were probably other games that were published under IDOS, but for Tomb Raider specifically, this is the last one.
Okay. So kind of along those lines, one thing that I did find I thought was interesting. It actually reviewed okay. It was not great, but
It did. I guess just quickly, I told a friend that we were going to be covering this game, and he's like, "Oh yeah, that one was actually like pretty good.
Mhm.
Like out of those three that came out around that time, like that one's good." So
yeah. So I did
take
like I some of the major outlets gave it a 70. Again, Moby scores I'll be referencing,
yeah.
so 75s. Metacritic I saw it sits at a 75, but I noticed that some of the major outlets that I'd seen had scores in other places were not present on Metacritic for some reason.
Huh.
Game Informer gave Moby score an 88, according to how they read that, and then Games Radar gave it a 90, and those were not included in the Metacritic scores.
Huh. Okay.
But despite that pretty favorable critical reception,
Mhm.
Eidos felt the game underperformed in sales and actually laid off 30 employees in January of 2009.
Oh no.
But this I thought this was unique. Later that month, Eidos CFO Robert Brent said a complete remake of the Lara Croft character would be necessary to make it a profitable franchise once again.
Guess what?
2013 rolls around and a complete
They
remake
make
of the
a
Lara
mega
Croft
hit.
character. Yeah. So I mean that he nailed it.
They
That's what they needed.
they
And that's what happened.
they continued the is it the year of the bow? Was that the year that like Far Cry
Oh,
was it Far
um,
Cry 2 or 3? It's probably 3 at that point. Anyways, games started using more and more bows around that time. Was it Crisis 3?
I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking around that time. When did Last of Us come out? Is that 2013, 2014?
I like how it's 2013.
2013
So
because
yep.
I know. Well,
I mean,
I'm thinking. Okay, my wife played a lot of
the
multiplayer,
bow.
and she only played with a bow. So
E3 2012. You're the bow.
maybe maybe that's not
So
the pull I'm looking for.
let's see here. You're the bow. So this is I just found a Giant Bomb forum post. That's where this joke came from. Was
Okay.
Giant Bomb? Was the year of the bow? So there's The Last of Us. Crisis 3 has a bow. Tomb Raider has a bow.
Hey, bows are
Dragon's
fun as hell when
Crown.
they're done well in video games.
I think that was the year that they figured out that if you like bows aren't guns, bows are not guns.
True.
So you have to like pull the bow back and like aim with it and let the tension build and then release it at the perfect time.
Are crossbows guns?
Crossbows are guns.
Okay, all right.
But like long bows and short bows are not guns.
All right.
They're projectiles, but they shouldn't act like guns.
Technically, the arrows are the projectiles. The bows wouldn't be the projectiles.
Whatever. It depends on how bad you are at shooting it.
That's true. You panic, you throw your bow, you have a
I'm
projectile.
pretty sure I've seen some cartoons where that would say otherwise.
That's true. I've
Just
seen
throw them
cartoons where they
bows.
fire the bow and the character flies. Character is then the
Yeah,
projectile.
exactly. The character is a projectile at that point. Anyways, bows aren't guns. Hot dogs are sandwiches.
Oh, you can't say that. God, you didn't want to talk politics and you're going to drop that? Unbelievable.
Boneless wings.
There we go. All right. That's that one.
SNES Aladdin. Let's go.
Man.
Should we move on? I think we're
Yeah, I
really...
don't think I have anything else on Tomb Raider Underworld.
No, I don't either. What is next?
What is next indeed? Do you want to introduce the next game?
Yeah, I just need to pull this thing up.
Yeah, once I remember what the second game is. That's right. We finished recording episode 1, and like 10 minutes after we were done, somebody asked me a question about the games, and I couldn't remember the last two. We had just covered 5 minutes before.
Oh, so. Yeah, there's a lot of information going through our heads. Yeah. The next game is a football strategy game, or tactics game, I should say. It is Football Tactics and Glory. Was the original one that we were supposed to cover the Nintendo Switch version? Is that what came up on the list?
Switch version, yes.
Okay, so it is on PC as well, and that's where Chris and I played some of this.
Yes, this game is also known as Soccer Tactics and Glory.
And also, the original name, if I can find it in my notes here, is it just Football Tactics? Was the original name of it in an early access?
Boy, the Glory really added some pop to that.
It really did. If you think about football or soccer, if you're an American,
mm-hmm.
This is the European football, the world's favorite pastime, football.
That's right. The non-Madden football.
Right. The actual football, the no hands, except if you're a goalie. Or yeah, I think it's just goalie, right?
Just goalies. Yep.
Okay.
They got the big gloves.
Anyways, they sure do. So yeah, Football Tactics and Glory is a turn-based soccer game, where you place your players on the pitch, where you want them to be. Each team has 3 plays to make during your turn. So it's like passing the ball to people or making your dude run across the field. It is like a full-on tactics game. Like it is a grid-based RPG, but with football.
Yeah, I was.
Chris, can you think of anything like similar to this that you've played before?
Well, that's the thing. When I thought of similar things, I found myself having to think of ways to explain how they're similar, even though I knew they were similar, right? So
sure.
the first thing that jumps in, that like pops in my mind, having played the demo of this, I hadn't played
Yep.
I've played the demo, so that's, if I hadn't played the demo, I'd have nothing good to tell you right now. But having played the demo, the game that this reminded me of is XCOM,
Okay.
um,
Why
which
XCOM?
which I would not have possibly imagined going into this. But so the reason XCOM is because all of your players have stats. They have their offensive rating, their accuracy rating, their defensive rating, their handling ability, and then there's one other stat I don't recall. But those stats are made up of numbers. So let's say you've got the ball in the at the feet of one of your attackers, okay, and you got you get 3 moves per round, before
Yep.
your opponent gets to go. And with your final move, you're going to take a shot at the goal. What it's doing is it's taking that character's accuracy rating,
Hmm.
and it's taking the goalie's blocking ability or whatever that stat is. And it's
Yeah,
also
I can't
taking
remember
whatever
that.
characters are between, or opponents are between the goalie and you, and adding their defensive numbers to it. Okay.
Right.
So the higher the attack rating, the better for your
Yep.
character, and then the higher the blocking and all that stuff. But what it's doing is it's doing a dice roll. Um,
And it gives you all the numbers up front too, which is nice. Like
yeah, you know what you're
it'll
getting.
show you like, oh, if you're shooting past a defensive player, it'll give a number for them, and it's like their role is between 1 and that number, and it has to, like, that number has to end up being higher than what your shot is.
Yeah,
Correct?
yeah. So if you take that shot, the dice rolls. If your shot total is higher than everything that's between you and the goal,
Yeah.
you'll get a goal. If it's not, the defender will intercept the ball, the goalie will make the save, whatever
Yep.
happens. Now, if your number is not high enough and you recognize off the get, you can either pass to another teammate who has a better handling ability to hold the ball for your opponent to then try to challenge, or you could
Right.
hold it yourself. It's this really tactical approach to what is typically a pretty fast-paced sport. I mean, I
Yeah.
know the scores don't always reflect that in soccer, but there's usually a lot going on a soccer field.
There's a ton going on.
I have a ton of respect for soccer players because they run nonstop, and it is just a taxing sport. So to slow it down and make it into what is essentially a turn-based RPG,
Hmm.
with strategy elements and things like that. I when I first read the disclaimer, or like the like how this game plays, I was like, "There's no way." But when I
Yeah,
played the demo, I was surprised.
it was a lot deeper than I thought it was going to be. Um, just because like the actual visuals of the game, it's like a top down view of the pitch. So like you can see everyone, you can see where they're positioned, um, and you can like click or you can like tap on or click. You can click on each character. We're not playing a touchscreen game. You can tap on or Jesus. Uh, you could select each character and kind of see their stats, see what kind of special abilities they might have. So like the first thing that they have you do is like they have you select a character, get up towards a goal, and then realize that, man, I probably shouldn't be this dude. I should pass it to someone else. They have a better accuracy rating, and they're also in a good position on the other side of the pitch to take a shot at this thing. Um, so it's neat to have different characters with different stats with different attributes, which actually goes way deeper than what's like originally presented. Once you actually get into like doing a career for this game, if you start looking at all the characters you have, or all the players you have on your team, everyone has like uh skill trees and like full RPG stats. It's super deep.
It is, yeah.
I did not expect any of that.
Beyond the gameplay aspect of it, that what happens on the field, there's another layer beyond that, as basically a management sim. You
Hmm.
manage the functionality of your team. I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not going to say it gets as deep as some of the bigger, the big four sports with their representation through EA Sports and stuff like that. But you know, there's something there to really kind of sink your teeth in, and the games are short. You can get through a game in, I don't know, what, 5-10 minutes maybe.
Yeah,
Depends on how quick you are with your decision making, but
right. But also, like, you have the choice to just simulate matches, and just see what the results are,
mhm.
and see how your characters level up after that. You can actually watch a computer controlled version of your matches, or you can play them yourself. Like, it gives you the control of, like, what level of sim do I want this to be? Do I want this to just be like, I fully sit back, I just control the numbers and not worry about the game, or do I want full control of everything?
Right. Yeah. It was an experience that looking at it did it a disservice. I think for me, when I looked at screenshots of it, that's what kind of was like, I don't think that this is going to be a game for me. But again, gameplay was different. So for that
Right.
reason, obviously we played a demo of it. If anybody's
Hmm.
curious to try that, the demo is available on Steam.
Right.
Um,
And there's a bunch of stuff apparently you can do in it. Like, there, you can start customizing countries and teams and
yeah,
uh
I made my
like
own team. Did you?
no, I actually selected the Minnesota FC
Oh,
as my
nice.
team, which is one of the teams that's in there. I don't know if they if they have like actual players names in
I
there.
don't think they do. I think one of the complaints was that it did have kind of automatically generated names that would come up. But
Gotcha. And I don't think the MNFC logo was correct. I think it was close. Like, they might be skirting some copyright issues here, but um I think it's neat that you could just, like, oh, what country do I want to see football teams from? And I was surprised that, like, the US had our pretty new team. Like, they've only been around for a couple of years, correct?
yeah, they have not been around very long. In fact, when did this? Do I have a
I think
date?
this game originally came out in like
2018.
2018.
Okay, yeah. So they would have been a couple years old then. But
Yeah. But
um,
still, like, I would have expected them that this game was made, I believe it by a Russian team, called Creo Team.
yes, definitely
Um,
not Crow Team, which
no, not
came
Crow
out
Team.
first.
That's completely different. Um,
But it was also
it's
published by,
actually a very small team.
yeah, and it was also published by Creo Team and Toplitz Productions.
Yeah. Yeah, this originally came out on PC in 2018. One thing that I found about the development of this, I'm finding more and more that Gamasutra is an incredible place for developer blogs.
Ooh, really?
But Andre, I'm gonna butcher this so hard. Uh, Kostush, Kostyushko. There we go, Kostyushko. He was the I guess the director, like the producer on the game. Um, what he wanted to do was make a like a tactical football game, but he didn't know how to make the game feel deep and tactical. Like, kind of what you were saying earlier about, like, you weren't sold on the game till you played it.
Mhm.
Um, he actually found inspiration in an unlikely place, and that's Persona 3.
Okay.
So he kind of boiled down Persona 3's battle mechanics in this post. That you have actions, you have skills, you have all out attacks. And his conclusion was, like, battle mechanics consist of three layers: basic actions, skills, and special attacks. And that's what he wanted to bring to, I guess, football tactics at that time. Um, so if you're playing the game, you can kind of see the through lines there. Like, characters do have different skills. Characters have different stats. You know how to use each character in specific ways to get the job done for what you're trying to do. A lot of it is knowing the strengths and weaknesses and what your players can do to win the game. Um, I just thought it was weird that not weird, but cool that he found inspiration in a JRPG for his tactical soccer game.
Yeah, that's cool. And actually, along those lines too, it reminds me there are characters that as you know as they grow and as they become better players, they have special moves that they can pull off and
Yep.
um, things like that. So it does kind of follow with that JRPG format. That's why it is a really unique game. Now critically, it hasn't really lit the world on fire. I saw Moby scores ranging from 75 to 60. Metacritic it actually currently sits at a 58, and OpenCritic it sits at a 65. So it's not like I said, setting the world on fire or anything, but again,
I would urge people to check it out.
yeah,
Like,
with the free demo, I would recommend
yeah,
just taking a look at it. If you decide to make the purchase, it's $24.99 on Steam. It is $40 on Switch, which
okay.
okay, I
Which like
that's
development costs money.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
that's understandable.
Um, and then I'll reference this website often, but istthereanydeal.com actually shows that historically, as of October 15th to the 24th, it was as low as $13.81. So, if
Hmm.
you want to wait for a sale to try it, and stuff like that, it does drop in price occasionally. But at the very least, I would encourage you to give the demo a shot. I don't know if I'll
Yeah.
play the game again, honestly. Um,
I'm thinking about it. Like having a portable version of this sounds pretty neat.
Yeah, on the
Um,
Switch, I think it is a good Switch game.
right. Well, also, like, I just watched all of Ted Lasso recently, which is about an American football coach going to coach a British football team. So having that like cultural connection right now
There you go.
is kind of helping my case for buying this.
The time is right.
It is. It is. If you like Ted Lasso, maybe you should check out Football Tactics and Glory.
All right, and I think that's all I've got for which we shorten it to FT and
Oh,
G.
sure.
Sure.
I would also like to say Creo Team has made one other game, just super quickly. But it was back in 2008. It was called Collapse, and it was a third-person shooter with some God of War like QTEs, some quick time events, and sword battles. So a
Interesting.
very different kind of game than this. And also like they came out 10 years apart, which not sure what Creo Team was doing between that time. Besides, there's an expansion for Collapse, but I think that was like a couple years after release. Yeah, other than that, I do not have much more about this game.
Oh yeah, I was gonna quick see if I could find anything about Creo Team, but I think we had talked
There's
about
not
it
much.
beforehand.
Their
Website
website
was
wasn't loading for me.
yeah,
Not
me
sure what
neither.
that's about, but
All
yeah,
right.
they're an enigma wrapped in a mystery. Outside of that one that one blog that I found. So
Perfect. All right.
if you have any if anybody out there has any anecdotes about Creo Team, let us know.
Yeah. Or any thoughts on football tactics and glory? Anything we didn't cover?
Hmm.
Why you think it's the best game ever? By all means, let us know. All right, but let's move on to our next game.
Yes.
This game, I can only find YouTube videos for it that I wasn't willing to invest in it, but I know John was. So he's got some personal experience with it. But the
Yeah.
game is called Mercury Race.
Hmm.
It is developed by Herrero Games. They are based out of Spain. It is also published by Herrero Games.
Hmm.
It is a racing slash shooting game.
It
Uh,
sure
re-
is.
Released in 2018 for the Nintendo Switch and the
Uh huh.
PC.
Uh huh.
John, I'm going to let you lead this one since you've played the game.
Yeah. So Mercury Race is visually what the description of the game calls retro futuristic. So there's a lot of how do I
I think I read that
hard to
and
call this.
closed the web page that I was on.
Yeah, it makes sense because it looks like what a futuristic game would look like in like the arcade in 1980, like
Okay.
very polygonal, basic polygonal ships that you're driving across a course that's like there's a lot of grids. There's a lot
Neon
of like video game, yeah, neon colors,
wireframe.
purples, greens, yellows.
Yeah.
Um, y- yeah, you're driving a ship that is kind of like an F-Zero car. Like you're racing around a track by yourself. You
Right.
can
We're gonna
do
touch on that once in a little bit here.
yeah. I mean you can do multiplayer like split screen and have one other person on the track with you, but you're not actually racing anyone. Um, and you're moving around the track, doing laps around it, and uh, trying to shoot different targets. There'll be like boxes in your way that you need to shoot. You're controlling that with the right stick. You don't actually have to like shoot anything. You're just painting the targets and letting your vehicle shoot things. But you're trying to clear obstacles out of your way as you're racing around this track. Um, which I don't know if that's an element that F-Zero needed, but maybe it does if you're not actually racing against anyone else.
Well, that's what threw me off. So when I was watching the gameplay video,
Hmm.
yes, I did not see any other opponents, which makes
No.
Mercury Race an interesting name. Um, but so it looks like there are a couple things that I noticed, and you can let me know if these are right.
Yeah,
You are trying to complete the course as quickly as possible.
that is correct.
You are shooting various objects of they look like I saw just red blocks sitting in the middle of the course. I saw some
Yes.
floaty balloon looking things.
Yes.
And then I also saw like a medal system at the end that reminded me of what a mobile title would employ. Did
Sure.
is it a combination of fast times and high scores that get you gold medals? Is that what we're talking
I
about here?
think so. I just don't remember there being any scoring element, like besides the the medals at the end of the race.
Okay.
I didn't really get into what was actually um, what was actually giving you those medals besides like speed. You have like an energy meter, so if you run into things, like eventually you can lose if you run out of your health. Um,
So then it also called out enemies at the end.
mhm.
It's you if you killed all of the quote unquote enemies, are the enemies
Sure.
just those red things that are popping up?
I think so. So there's red things that are like floating above the track, like shooting bullets down.
Okay.
Um, but that's mostly like you get rid of those so you're not taking damage as you're passing by, or you shoot these boxes that are in your way to clear your path, also so you don't take damage as you're passing by. Or you're shooting buttons on like doors to open them up. Um,
Oh, okay.
yeah, I tried some of the later levels. Like there's one that's inspired by like a pinball machine. So there's flippers and bumpers and some weird like slow down, like slow time mechanic. Um, but it still boils down to you aiming a reticle with your right stick and you're steering with your left stick, and you have that it it shouldn't be as disjointed as it is. Because if you think of like a first person shooter or a third person shooter at that, you're doing the same thing. You're controlling a character with your left stick and you're aiming with your right stick. But with this, your left stick is you're driving a car through trying to go as fast as you can through a course, while the right stick is just like flailing around trying to paint targets to clear them out of your path.
Okay.
Um,
When you say
and
driving with the left stick, you just mean turning, right? You're not accelerating like
you're
by
turning,
pushing
so
up,
you
are you?
so you're holding. I think it was the right trigger to go.
To
I
accelerate?
think
Okay.
you
Good.
you also have like a boost on like the B button. Um, it took me a while to figure out like how am I actually shooting anything, because it doesn't really tell you. You're picking up like little green bullet looking things, and it doesn't tell you if like you have a limited amount of ammo, which it doesn't seem like you do. There's a whole lot of stuff that it just doesn't. It just doesn't explain very well,
Okay.
which I find is going to be a thing with a lot of games in general
Yeah.
that we come up against in this.
So as it relates
Yeah.
to kind of the critical reception for this game, it is,
Hmm.
it's not wasn't a huge release. So I actually had one review on Moby, had a score of 60. Seems like you kind of concur with that based on your experience. Not not
I might
great.
score it lower.
Might even go lower than that. Okay.
It might go lower. I'm sure there's a level of mastery to this. But I mean, like all games there is, but
Yeah.
I just don't see any. I don't feel any urge to try to get better at it.
Well, that was my other question too. I saw the level select screen that they presented,
Right.
and it was like kind of grid based. It reminded me of like a Trackmania or a Trials,
Yeah.
where
Yep.
it seems like upper left is easy, and as you work your way through, it gets harder and harder. Is that kind of the same thing as you work toward the bottom right of the screen or whatever? Are you getting are the races just more complicated? The
That's what I figure is going on there.
Okay,
So I started with like the first couple of races, and then I went down to like the third row of them, and it was considerably harder. That was like the pinball one.
okay,
And then going back to like the first set, like it's those first ones are definitely like the Mario's Raceway, like getting you
right.
going with the mechanics. But like I said, it doesn't really invite you to figure those out.
And it's funny you mentioned Mario's Raceway because that's
Yep.
the other thing that this game reminded me of. It reminded me of a kart racer just crossed with F-Zero, which maybe you said that earlier, but it's the concept of the ships and I mean I was gonna say racing again. I don't know what you're racing. I don't know what the race portion of this game is.
I think it's just the clock.
Okay,
You're erasing the clock and
um,
yourself.
and something yeah something about just the way that the ship's handled and stuff like that. It reminded me of your prototypical kart racer. So
Right.
if this is a game that's interesting to you, it is available on Steam. It is available on
Yep.
Switch. I saw a price of $7.99. If you want to get a little bit more bang for your buck, there's a bundle on Steam for it's just the Herrero Games bundle. Gets you this game, Job the Leprechaun, and Reptilian Rebellion. Who knows? Maybe they'll come up on the list
That
and we can
sounds
talk more
great.
about them. I know,
Actually,
and that's 12.47. So really, you're
well,
getting one game for 7.99 and then two games for oh boy, go gadget math. What is that? 5.50?
another $5. Yeah.
Yeah. But if you want to hold out, is there any deal? Said this game was as low as 79 cents between February 21st and March 6th of this year. So
Oh, so maybe soon
maybe it's getting
it'll
to be
go
about
down in
that time
price.
again.
Yeah, it's rough. Like I could see some potential with the ideas, but that shooting mechanic is just not good. So was not into it at
Well, and
all.
that's
But
oh, I don't think I grabbed. Shoot, I know I read this, but that was one of their like quote unquote back of the box bullets that said original shooting controls or something to that
yeah,
effect.
yeah, original shooting and racing mechanic. I
Yeah.
have all the bullet points here. Can you drive and shoot at the same time? Mercury Race will challenge you to keep an eye on the road and also on the enemies and items on the circuit. The more enemies you destroy, the more crystals you get to increase your speed of your ship. Okay, so those little green things weren't bullets; they were crystals. to for it's like collecting coins in Mario Kart. Mercury Race does not try to be a driving simulator game, but an arcade experience with fast action, quick plays, and precise gameplay, which makes sense.
Okay.
There's 15 circuits, uh, which under that bullet point it says there are 15 different circuits. Will
Oh,
you get
okay.
all the badges?
In case you weren't clear the first time.
Uh, there's 8 different ships. Each one has its own unique features and attributes. It's really just like handling speed. how much health or shielding you have.
And the ships, from what I saw, did not look that good. The ships they looked like the gummy ships from Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah, it's like a mix between gummy ships and F-Zero cars.
Yeah.
There's local multiplayer, like I said, split screen. And then there's an arcade and King of the Galaxy mode. And it's really just getting all the badges on arcade mode, or play a sequence of 5 circuits on King of the Galaxy mode. Galaxies have their own ranking.
Okay.
So there's not a lot there.
Pretty bare bones experience overall.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't know if we have too much more to say about Mercury Race.
I do not. I think I've said plenty.
Well, should we take a little break before we step into
Ooh.
Before we step into something?
It's a big one.
It is. It's a big one.
We'll see you after this break.
All right. We'll see you guys in a second. Welcome back. John, do I have you?
No, what? I'm here.
Huh? What? Huh?
I'm sorry, huh? What?
Well, here we go. We are back. Let's start off with part 2 of our show. This next game, this is a doozy. This
a little indie game for the Nintendo Vita.
Yeah, we alluded to it earlier when we were talking about games that I had started during my Twitch anniversary stream, World of Final Fantasy. This is the OG Final Fantasy, developed by Square, published by Square. We drew the Vita version. Now we're going to discuss this in just a second, but I'm going to get through these couple snippets here. Published by Square Enix.
The last game they ever made.
Yep, last one.
I
can't believe it didn't work out for him.
Fabled failure.
Obviously, this is an RPG. The Vita version came out in 2012, but it released on a lot of platforms. So I'm going to list off these platforms, and then we're going to discuss this for a bit. So we've got the NES, we've got the MSX, we've got the Nintendo 3DS, the Wii, the Wii U, the BlackBerry, the PlayStation 3, PSP, PlayStation Vita, Wonder Swan Color, iPhone, Android, and Windows Phone. So John and I tackled this game in 2 different ways.
Because we didn't really talk about it.
We didn't.
We did and we didn't. And this is a learning and growing experience for this podcast.
Right. As this podcast evolves and as we we figure out the best approach on things, this kind of put our heels to the fire a little bit. Now, there aren't a lot of games that have been re-released the number of times that this game has. Yeah. So this is very much a trial by fire for us. But what we originally set out to do with this podcast was to cover the iterations of games that were drawn. Okay, so the PlayStation Vita version. And I think that's great. But what happens when we do that is we have the original version of a game, in this case, if we take Final Fantasy for an example, because it's obviously pertinent to what we're talking about.
Final Fantasy.
Right.
Yes.
So John spent a lot of time looking for Vita specific information.
Or technically in this case, the Vita version is the PlayStation 1 release.
Right. Sorry,
that we got here as Final Fantasy Origins. So that was Final Fantasy 1 and Final Fantasy 2 bundled onto one disc for PlayStation.
And
I decided to cover, or at least try to look up information for that specific version.
Okay. Yes. And we both agree 100% that the effort that goes into these different versions should be credited, and it should be discussed, and it should be celebrated. With this game and potentially other games, the problem comes in with leaving the original version of the game on the list, because what we're then doing is essentially we're going to have duplicate conversations at different points in time should the original
Right.
Final Fantasy ever come up. So we can't talk to the specifics of the Vita / PlayStation release without touching on the same things that we would touch on for the NES release.
Right.
Um,
And for this game in particular, like this version of Final Fantasy is mostly a graphical upgrade.
mhm.
Um, the visuals were updated to kind of give it more of a Super Nintendo Final Fantasy vibe, as opposed to the original NES version. They added like a cutscene at the beginning of like the hero of light fighting a dragon, and a new opening. Not cinematic, but does the original NES one open with like when darkness enshrouds the world, like the heroes of light will?
It does. It shows up
Okay.
on a glorious blue screen with beautiful white font.
Okay, so this is different. This has like what looks like Mode 7 clouds
Oh yeah, no
behind
clouds in
it.
this
Like
one.
they've definitely like updated the opening of this game, and all the visuals in general.
Yeah, and
Um
to be fair, like that isn't even the last iteration of this game. This went on to then get another coat of paint and additional content beyond that. So it's
yes.
that kind of just it without discussing with John, which was my mistake. I just went ahead and researched the whole damn thing.
Which is fine. That's
And
great.
yeah, so I'll be
And it
bringing more to the table than John will in this instance, but that's because I
right.
selfishly didn't tell him anything. Um,
No, that's fine. Also, just like Final Fantasy itself to me is a daunting subject, especially the first one.
uh-huh.
It's been talked about so many times in the history of video games, and what it's done for Square, for Square Enix these days, and what it's done for the genre of RPGs, and its legacy going forward, even into like Final Fantasy 16 coming up on PlayStation 5 soon. Um, it, it's tough to wrap your mind around covering this game and also like a specific version of this game um, in what could be like a 20 to 30-minute segment on a podcast.
Yeah, we will not end up doing this game justice because there is so much content that exists out there
Yeah.
specific to this game. But we'll do our best. And invite you to engage with us and if we miss something or if there's something that you didn't know that we talked about that you'd like us to go in further on. This is one of those games that, recognizing the timing in which it came up in this podcast's life very early.
Very early. It was part of our first list.
Yeah.
This
And
was
then
supposed to be week one
I
with that
actually saw that
almost 3 hour podcast.
oh my God. Like, I'm not ready for a Final Fantasy, but
No.
we're early in the podcast process here. We're early on
Uh-huh.
Patreon. We have some goals. We have some things that we want to do to expand our content creation. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to take this game, we're going to set it to the side when we're done here, and potentially do something with it later on. So if this may not be the last time you hear about Final Fantasy, this will not be the end all be all for Final Fantasy, but we might find a way to bring it back under the procedurally generated umbrella at some point.
Yeah.
So don't yell at us. That's what I'm saying.
Actually, please yell at me.
Actually, do yell at us. Yeah, we need to fill up that community section.
Just yell at me. I like it.
Oh God.
Oh. So Chris, what did you find out about this little known game
Well,
called Final Fantisa? Did I just say something offensive?
probably. Yeah,
Okay.
and yeah, somebody's not gonna like that. Well, before I go into that though, John, what's your personal history with this game?
This game, man, Final Fantasy 1, considering my first Final Fantasy was a little bit of 7 and not understanding it, and then 8 being the one that I fell in love with. Going back to the Super Nintendo era or even the NES era of Final Fantasies has always been almost impossible for me. I can never really latch onto any of them.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know if I doubt it's uh because of like the the mechanics. It could be the mechanics. I don't know. There's something not there's something cool about it not being as handholdy because it is a pioneer in the genre, right?
Right.
Like they drop you in at first. They're like, here's 4 characters, name them, tell them what class they're gonna be, and then you're off in the world. Go have fun, go figure it out. And especially with Final Fantasy 1, the times that I tried to play it, it was just like an impenetrable wall.
Yeah.
These days I could probably get through it. But having things like, man, my RPGs at the time were like Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy 7 and 8, Mario RPG, things that kind of like lead you down a path and kind of teach you how different characters play. They give you a little bit more to work with.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, with a game like this that has such a long lineage, for you to start with, the seventh entry and then really like the eighth entry, as the game that made it be something for you.
right.
Um, I mean, to go all the way back to the beginning and delete every iterative improvement that happened
Yeah.
over those years, it should feel impenetrable. Like,
Yeah.
I started my first Final Fantasy game was, I believe, Final Fantasy 2 in the US, Final Fantasy 4 to the rest of the world. And then I went on to play 6. I didn't actually play the original Final Fantasy until quite a bit later,
Hmm.
because I just felt like I was missing out, having loved 4 and 6 so much.
Right.
Um, I think I remember renting it prior to playing 4 and 6, like a long time ago, but it's not something that ever stuck with me. Nothing that ever it never resonated with me.
Hmm.
But not a game that I ever owned. I played a similar game, Dragon Warrior, quite a bit. So, which is even more strange that Final
The
Fantasy never.
superior game. No,
Whoa,
I'm
whoa.
kidding. I've actually played more Dragon Warrior than I have Final Fantasy 1.
Yeah, and it's, despite my love for Final Fantasy, I do really like Dragon Warrior, Dragon Quest, but despite my love for Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, I played a lot more of the first one of that game than I did.
And hopefully we'll get to talk about it one day. But the simplicity with Dragon Warrior, like being that you're just one character and like leveling up that one person and
Mhm.
getting gear for that one person and going on like singular adventures that kind of bring you across the world was neat. And with this, just like dropping you with like 4 not nameless characters, because you do have to name them before it lets you start, which I found out today. Um, just give me default names, please. Um, yeah, it's very. I don't want to keep like harping on the like it doesn't hold your hand at all, but like it drops you in the world and like none of your characters have any gear whatsoever, and you have to like go and talk to people and try to parse what you're supposed to do. I don't know if a lot of this was like in the manual back
Well,
in
and
the
that's
day
like
or
that was the thing with these older games. Like, you just had to hope that you talked to the right person to push the story forward in some way. Um, you couldn't play this game and not pay attention to the conversations that you were having.
right. I
Um,
mean, that's RPGs in general. Like you're talking to people, you're trying to it's a more intellectual
It is. It's
uh
you have to process.
game,
You don't get a waypoint that shows up and tells you where to go to.
right?
It was a different age, and and that might have been my problem as well. I just maybe the way that the game opens. I mean, it does some it does one of the coolest things that I've ever seen in a game of that age. Like
Hmm.
back then, it gave me an opening that I fondly remember. It was such a cold open, and that you just make characters, the screen lights up, and you're standing in front of a town with
Yep.
nothing. Like you just
Yep.
there you go, and it's like okay, wow, all
It's like,
right,
oh, there's a castle above you, there's a town surrounding you, and there's forest surrounding all of that.
right. But then like
Uh,
you you slowly piece together what you need to do. You talk, and I'll go through the first little bit of this game. I'm not going to call it spoilery because the game's been out forever. I guess it is
sure.
spoilery, but uh, the reason I'm going to say it is because it leads you to the point in the game where I'm like, this is truly something epic. You go through,
Hmm.
you talk to the king. Your first quest is to save Princess Sarah, who's his daughter, who
From
was taken by Garland.
Yep.
Um, and I'm not going to go beat for beat, but you find him, you rescue the princess,
Hmm.
you bring the princess back to the king. The king says, to pay you back, I'm going to rebuild the bridge that has been out for forever so you can continue on your journey. This whole thing takes maybe an hour to 2 hours. I mean, it's not a short process by any stretch, but you leave the castle and you walk up and you cross the bridge. And when you cross the bridge, you get I'm going to call it a cutscene. It's an NES thing, but
Yeah.
you get this
Text
zoom.
comes up on the screen.
Yeah, you get this like zoomed out picture of the castle in the background, the theme music kicks in, and you get this intro, and it's amazing, it's gorgeous, like you just played through a
Yeah.
prologue to a game, like, and that was one of the
And
first.
it felt like a whole game.
Yeah, like yeah, you had committed and you're like, oh my
Yeah.
god,
Yeah.
like we're just scratching the surface, this game's gonna go forever. um and I always will remember the opening of the game because of that, the way it kind
Hmm.
of struck me as like this weird prologue that you thought you had made some good pretty good distance into the game, and actually no,
Yeah.
you're just getting started.
That was me with Chrono Trigger. I think Chrono Trigger is like the first actual RPG that I played.
Mm,
Um,
that was a good one.
and getting to, is it like super early when you fight that like dragon tank on the bridge,
It's
like the bone
early-ish,
dragon thing? Yeah, like,
probably
but
five
it's
six
it's
hours.
still like within like the first tenth of the game.
Yeah, yeah,
And by that time, I'm like, oh, this is so cool. Like, this thing's gonna be ending soon. Little did I know that like finishing that was like, oh, I'm gonna be sent to the future next, or to the Stone Age. Um, as a kid, RPGs were something that I just couldn't necessarily wrap my mind around how massive in scope they were.
right, they felt
How
like
much
these
time?
unbeatable, just never ending things. The first time I beat an RPG, I honestly don't think I beat one until like Final Fantasy 7, honestly.
Sure. Yeah.
By then I was probably 13 and had a little bit more patience, but um going back and playing some of these was it feels a lot smaller now, but back then, oh my god, the
Yeah.
scope was incredible. But um but yeah, that's kind of my personal history with it. Now it's one of my great gaming shames though. I'd never beaten Final Fantasy. The closest I'd come, I had played it on my iPhone. Um
Hmm.
and this
That's
was
where I
a
played
while.
Dragon Warrior.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So
It's perfect for that.
yeah, it was probably, I don't know, 6 or 7, maybe 8 years ago that it
Hmm.
released on iPhone, and I was at the time, I was like, "Holy, like, that's novel, like, let's play this game." And I actually made it super far, and then I think I upgraded my phone and my I don't know if my, like, not Game Pass, whatever it's called for Apple, that Game Center thing,
Oh yeah,
I
Game
wasn't
Center.
able to get it onto my new phone, so I lost all my progress.
Oh no.
So I've never to this day beaten the original Final Fantasy.
Well, let me tell you, the one that's on Vita is actually pretty good. Lots of cool quality of life improvements. Um, I, and I think it's a lot of it's just window dressing. Like obviously, like they updated the graphics to look more like the Super Nintendo Final Fantasies.
Yeah.
So just like the world looks nicer, but also all the menus are more in line with the PS1 and Super Nintendo entries. So they're a lot more readable. They're easier to navigate. I'm sure on the phone, on your iPhone, you had updated menus as well.
Well, yeah, the
But
iPhone version is actually based off the PSP version, which is a step beyond. It's enhanced a step beyond the PlayStation version.
right, right, which is also I think built off of the Game Boy Advance Dawn of Souls games,
Yeah,
which have like extra dungeons and
yeah, there are
whatever
4
they
extra
added
dungeons.
stuff,
Yeah.
which is awesome. Why wouldn't you want to have more with that game? Um, I think one of the most exciting things about the original Final Fantasy is, uh, like comparing it to something like Dragon Warrior. Dragon Warrior, you are one character with like a sword, and you're like upgrading that sword as you go along. When you're creating characters with Final Fantasy, what you have 6 classes to choose from, and
Yes.
any character could be any class. So you can have like 4 white mages, or uh, like 2 thieves and a white mage and a black mage. There's a ton of different ways that you can try to make it through this game. Like you can make your own challenge mode. Like, how can I make this super hard for myself? Can I do this with 3 black mages and do they have paladins in there?
Well, they have
What are the
the
classes?
classes are warrior slash fighter,
Yep.
black belt slash monk,
Hmm.
thief, white mage, black mage, red mage.
Right, right.
Now, one of the cooler things, and just because we're talking about classes, all of those classes do uh, evolve. I guess that's not the right term, but they upgrade into a warrior becomes a knight, black belt becomes a master, thief becomes a ninja, white, black, and red mages all become white, black, and red wizards. So that's
That's super cool. I didn't
yeah,
know that.
yeah. It's another one of those game changing things where it's like your
Yeah.
characters change. They
Right.
get stronger, and their actual sprites change into something that looks more powerful and more intimidating. They
Hmm.
basically go from kids to adults. If you look at the sprites, it's
Right.
kind
It is like it is a maturation of everything
of
of your class, of your characters, of the story. Um, what one thing that kind of like sticks out to me with this, like you do have to purchase all of everything, right? Like items, gear, magic. You
yes,
have to make sure that you have like specific levels for your magic to even use them.
yeah.
Um,
You do, yeah. That was always kind of a strange thing for me coming back to this game was having to buy my magic, having only
I'm a fan
three.
of learning as you go.
I am too. Tie my fire 2 spell to level 15 and call it good.
Yep.
That's what
Yep.
I would like. Um, but yeah, it was one of those going back to Final Fantasy and seeing that each character only had 3 spots per spell level. Um, was that I then had to buy, and magic was crazy expensive.
Right.
Like you had in the original one, you had to grind like mad. Now,
It's also
I
the coolest thing to do.
it is, yeah. I jumped into the place or the my phone version again just to start a new game and see. I think that maybe they made it uh crazy easier because I didn't look at magic in the first area, but I did look at weapons. I had 500 gil,
Hmm.
and the most expensive weapon was like 8.
Yeah.
Like I've never played an RPG where you start with enough money to buy every single
Everything.
thing in the entire town.
Well, like now that I think about it, maybe they have it set that way because you can configure your party in any way. Like they need
True.
to, without programming a ton of stuff, compensate for your choices at the beginning.
Yeah, I mean that could very well be it. Um, but I remember like the old version of the game, like you had to grind like mad to get
Hmm.
enough money to buy upgraded weapons to get the magic that you needed.
Yep.
Um, yeah, one of the things that the PlayStation version did change, which was a godsend for anybody who's played the original Final Fantasy. You are penalized if you attack the same enemy too many times. So if you are zoning and you're not paying attention, or you miscalculate how many hit points an opponent has,
Yeah,
if your first character attacks and kills the enemy and the enemy dies, your next character or however many subsequent characters are targeting that enemy will just not attack. And
they
that
just like whiff.
they'll attack an empty space. So it's just like
Okay.
it wastes your entire turn. So I remember
Yes,
falling into that
that
trap.
is a weird old RPG thing. Like, doesn't autocorrect. I feel like people don't do that anymore
Right.
because it's
You don't hear about that anymore.
infuriating.
But of
It
course,
could end up
turn-based games
pretty.
don't even really exist anymore. So
I wish they did.
except unless they're
They
soccer
do.
games.
They do. Unless they're soccer games
Yep.
or they're like the Tokyo RPG Factory,
That's true. Yeah.
or the Bravely team.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So there is some hope and
Dragon Quest. What am I thinking?
and Dragon Quest.
Jeez, that's a big one.
Exactly. They exist. It's just not necessarily in the Final Fantasy franchise anymore. Sadly.
Right.
Unfortunately. We have a Devil May Cry game coming soon.
So this game obviously went on to spawn something that is still kicking to this day. Not just kicking. I mean, this thing is it's virulent as ever. I hope I used that term right. Um,
Sure. Why not?
sure.
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna correct me. Correct me
Yeah.
if I use that wrong. Um, but so this game turned around the fortunes of Square.
Right.
There, I'm gonna circle back on Sakaguchi a little bit. He was the basically the creator of Final Fantasy in the credits later, but just know this game, while it was kind of billed as the saving grace for Square,
Hmm.
it may very well have been. I did find a quote from Sakaguchi saying otherwise, though, which as time goes on, maybe you don't want that to be your legacy. Is this
Sure.
game saved us? But his quote is, "There's an urban legend that the final in FF meant that this was our last project. While we were having some hard times back then, the truth is that as long as the title could be shortened to FF, any word would have sufficed." That was one of the requirements he had for naming.
That's
It was initially going to be
right.
Fighting Fantasy. I'm so glad that that was not the name of this game. But there was already a board game out there with that same name.
Oh,
So,
see?
so he's speaking directly to that rumor that Final Fantasy saved Square.
I'd like to say, first off, that didn't stop Dragon Quest.
What
Because
do you
that's
mean?
why we have Dragon Warrior. Because there was an RPG called Dragon Quest that was licensed in the US.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's why we have Dragon Warrior.
Oh, okay.
And if
I
I'm
thought it
wrong
was
on
on the
that,
Reddit
someone let me
actually.
know. But I'm pretty sure that was a trademark issue of some
Okay.
sort. Anyways, sorry. Continue about
Well, I mean
Final.
that was just one of those things. The Final Fantasy has been billed as that saving grace for that company,
Right,
and it
but it
may
might
very
not have
well be the
been.
case. But this is from Hironobu Sakaguchi's mouth saying,
Right,
we might have been able to keep it going, but the Final Fantasy was not the reason. Um, it was
but
named
also
that. So
what he's not saying there is it sure helped.
yeah,
It
true.
sure brought our company up quite a bit.
It's true. Let me think. So the I'm just trying to tackle these in the right order. What makes the most sense? Um, do you have anything that you want to add? I know you said you had a little bit less, just because I selfishly wanted to hog all of the information for
No,
myself.
and this is a franchise that you are. I mean, I'm also super into Final Fantasy, but I feel like early Final Fantasy is something that you have more to do with than I do. So naturally, I was gonna try to give you a little bit more with this. And I hope this is giving you the time to figure out what you were going to say.
Yeah, it has. So I mean, I have
Okay,
a
great.
lot
Excellent.
of interest. There's so much that's out there about Final Fantasy that's already been said,
Yep.
and I think some of the interesting things that I found is this is the only Final Fantasy game, the only one that in no way features chocobos.
Okay.
Okay, and this is
Yeah.
one of
Noted.
3 that in no way feature Moogles. So chocobos and Moogles have become a staple of the franchise. If you are not familiar with Final Fantasy, chocobos and Moogles basically go with Final Fantasy,
When do
hand in
those
hand.
come in then?
So chocobos actually show up in the second game,
Okay.
and I believe that Moogles show up in the third game, but they don't show up in the fourth game, and then show up again in the fifth game.
Okay. I mean, 4 is just weird, right? Like 4 is kind of the three and 4 kind of outliers. Is that correct,
Well,
or is it 5? Let me
um,
just keep on going up in numbers. Is it 6?
no,
Is
six,
7 is 7 the outlier?
six is a banger. Um,
Uh, now that I think about it, it's like 5.
well, so the,
5 and
num-
4
the
were
numbering
technically.
convention in the U.S. was 1 was released here,
Yep.
2 was not,
Right. 3
3
was
was
not.
not,
4 was, but
4
as
was
2.
as Final Fantasy 2 in the U.S.,
Yes.
5 was not,
Mm-hmm.
6 was released in the U.S. as Final Fantasy 3,
Correct.
and then 7 and so on and so forth. Now, all the ones that weren't released here have eventually gotten U.S. releases since then, and I
Sure
am
did.
actually, I think I've played them all. In fact, I might have even beaten them all, but that would have been a very long time ago, and it's one of those things that I'm thinking about revisiting some of those games, um, just to refamiliarize myself with them. But what I found an awesome, and I'm going to plug this as well. There was a, a a YouTube video that I one for the Tomb Raider discussion we had, and one for the what other game was that? Football Tactics, and no, that was
Yes. Mercury race?
yeah, it was Mercury Race. Yes, it was the
Yeah.
one where I got to watch the gameplay. So I will make sure that I attach those links in the show notes. But I found an awesome video, a retrospective of Final Fantasy One by uh, was it Retro? No, Retro RPG fan. I gotta again. I'll place the link.
Okay.
Um, but it does a good job of really getting into the history of just the it goes into the company, it goes into the development of the game,
Mm-hmm.
the different iterations of it. Inspired initially, it was initially inspired by Dungeons and Dragons, which I honestly didn't know because I was never a Dungeons and Dragons player. Um, but it
Right.
was
Surprisingly, an influential game,
yeah,
especially for the 80s. Like, I also like having been born in the late 80s, growing up through the 90s. Like, I had heard D&D a lot growing up, but like never realized its influence on video games, especially in the 80s until really like sometime in the 2000s. Um, and maybe my uh that's my exposure to D&D was more in the 2000s, and like seeing those dots that are connected between like JRPGs and a Western tabletop RPG.
mhm.
But it was never something that I considered when I was playing like Final Fantasy VIII. Like, oh yeah, these are typical fantasy tropes like mashed into this game. It never crossed my mind but before I later figured that out.
Yeah, and I think Final Fantasy too was widely regarded as one of the most one of the most true depictions of what D&D fans wanted too. Like there were D&D fans that really thought Final Fantasy was the closest you could get to visualizing something like that.
Right,
Um,
you're going on an adventure with a party. Every character can do different things. Um, I don't know. Like you have to have a good group that's composed well to make it through whatever dungeon that you're facing.
yeah. So this was the first game from Square to sell more than 400,000 copies in Japan. And I'm going
Pretty
to
good.
circle back on some of those early games to let you know just what those were. But this game obviously was not without its flaws. So this game includes a ton of grinding, a lot of backtracking, and a lot of people do consider it the most difficult in the franchise. And I think that we touched on that a little bit earlier when you kind of said like it's one of those impenetrable things. That's
Right.
part of the reason it's so difficult. It's one of those. It is kind of archaic now in its structure, and it's grinding and as somebody who's experienced modern day games, it's a hard thing to return to. So it's for that reason we asked the question. Actually, we didn't ask it on the podcast. We talked about it before we started, but I get the question a lot. Being a Final Fantasy fan, where do I start in the series? Where's a good point to kick it off? And um, if you want to go chronologically, obviously go nuts. Start with one. Know you're in for
Yeah.
something. But if you are not looking to do it chronologically, one shouldn't be one of your top five options. Uh,
No, no. I mean, if you're looking for an old school turn-based RPG, probably look at like 3, 4, 6, maybe. Like,
I would say one of the two that released in the US, either four or six.
okay, but
Six
just go
probably
6.
being the
6 is
best.
regarded by a lot as like the best Final Fantasy.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
go nuts, play 6.
yeah. That's probably pretty fair. But if you even getting back into the 16-bit graphics, sometimes if that's hard for you, then you have the seven. You have
Go nuts, play 8. It's the
you like
best one.
eight. I would skip eight. I would go nine or 10. But yeah, I mean it's obviously everybody has their taste. There's a lot of people that really like eight.
Right.
It never just resonated with me. But there's all kinds of places to start. I will answer that question all day to try to help people get into this
Right.
franchise, which can be very
Yeah. What other RPGs are you into?
a lot.
No, I didn't mean you specifically. I
Oh,
just meant
okay. I
like
thought you were
when you're
asking
trying
me.
to figure out like how to approach somebody's like question of like where do you start.
Yeah.
And even if they haven't played like RPGs, it's like, oh, have you played like Pokemon, which is an RPG, and that's actually probably closer to Dragon Quest than anything. But that's a nice place to start.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, have you played Pokemon? What kind of Pokemon do you like? And you can kind of figure out people's play styles from there and try to fit them into a good Final Fantasy.
Yeah, and we
It's as
mentioned
simple.
too, like the chocobos and moogles are in almost every game.
Hmm.
The game does have universal things that carry over from game to game, but none
Right.
of them are actually linked unless they're one of the few sequels that actually exist. So if you are,
Or if it's in Final Fantasy 14,
or if it's in
then
yeah something like that where
everything's
everything
linked.
gets brought together. But
Yes,
if you're into the newer games, Final Fantasy 15 is a good spot to start. Even
yeah,
it's the latest iteration. It plays very different than the old ones, but it's a fantastic video game. So
it is. Yep.
um, but yeah, I'm going to buzz through. We covered some of this stuff here, but let's talk a little bit about Sakaguchi.
Sure.
Um, Prior to working on Final Fantasy, he was actually working part time for Square, and he helped in varying capacities on four main games. I think there were some other ones called out in that documentary that I hadn't heard of, but the Death Trap in 1984, Will the Death Trap 2 in 1985,
Okay.
Cruise Chaser Blasty in
He said
1986.
Crudes Chaser, like the Crudes.
And then
That's way early for that.
and then probably the most well known of the ones that he worked on prior to Final Fantasy was Rad Racer in 1987.
Oh yeah, Rad
Um,
Racer.
but every one of those releases seemed to garner less and less sales. It was nothing really was sticking. So yes, Final Fantasy was the thing that it was his last ditch effort. He had in that time where he was releasing those games committed to being going from part-time to a full-time employee.
Hmm.
Uh, Obviously found tons of success with Final Fantasy, was promoted to an executive VP in 1991,
Dang,
and then
it's
president of
quick.
Square LA Inc. It's now known as Square USA. I'm not sure, is Square Los Angeles, I guess.
It probably.
I guess I
That's my
never
guess.
looked into that.
I
Uh,
have no idea.
but that would have been in 1995. So he had, climbed and helped make Squaresoft a video game powerhouse
Yes.
until 2001.
Mm-hmm.
In 2001, he was put in charge of making a movie based on Final Fantasy.
The the spirits within.
The Spirits Within. Yes, that was the name of the movie that that came out.
It sure
Um,
did. It
yeah,
came out all right.
and I'm still confused by why that movie carried a Final Fantasy anything.
Uh, yeah, and there's people who will defend it. I haven't seen it since it was released,
I don't think I
so
have
I
either.
don't really
Maybe,
have any like strong opinions about it. It looked nice.
yeah.
It had like Final Fantasy elements in it, but it more closely resembles a Final Fantasy VII side story of some sort,
Mhm.
and I think that's the thing that they were going for with it.
Well, this movie, despite your opinions as to whether you like it or not, again,
Right.
I haven't seen it in a long time, so it's something that I think I do want to watch again. But this movie honestly ended up changing the course of Square's future. It did horribly at the box
Yep.
office. It lost over $120 million. Um, it
Jeez.
was a CG movie, which at the time and still is. Those are
It still
incredibly
is a CG movie.
expensive.
You're right.
Well, I mean, what I mean is that they are extremely expensive to
Oh
create.
yes.
Um,
And coming from Square at that time, they were putting out games like what Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9, like things with fantastic cinematics
yeah,
and like just jaw dropping visuals with their cinematics team. So the idea of a Final Fantasy CG movie was incredible at the time.
yeah,
Like I
I was
was so
all for
pumped for the Spirits Within.
it. Mhm.
That's like if Blizzard were to make a CG movie of some sort, which like they almost do every WoW expansion now. But just having a team with that grasp on just cool ass visuals,
Yeah,
um, yeah,
but
it was exciting leading up to that
yeah,
for me.
but obviously it didn't pan out, and that
No,
led to Sakaguchi's exodus from Square. So, but that's not it. That also eventually led to the merger between SquareSoft and Enix, forming what we now know as Square Enix. And then Sakaguchi went on to form Mistwalker Studios. So that the failure of that movie basically pushed that merger together because they wanted to continue to create high budget, big video games, but in order to do so, they needed to kind of complete that merger. Um, and then Sakaguchi was left to go do his own thing with Mistwalker, and he went on to release some games that I truly enjoyed. Blue Dragon,
Blue
um,
Dragon's great.
Lost
It's a
Odyssey.
game.
Those are two fantastic RPGs. But I didn't see that the studio has gone under or anything, but they're not. I don't know if they're being
I feel like they're still working on some stuff.
just
I
yeah,
haven't really heard the name pop up recently.
okay, on like a contracting kind of a thing where they're just doing developmental work
Oh,
for other studios,
I
maybe.
I haven't heard their name come up,
Yeah.
so I'm not sure.
Oh, okay. But yeah, that's kind of the rise, and I don't want to say fall of Sakaguchi because he's you know he what happened. And I still think like his contribution to that company, to Final Fantasy. I don't know how
Sorry,
that exodus worked out. I don't know how bitter the feelings were. $120 million is a lot to be, salty about, but
right.
I hope that his name is respected and, um,
It is. I feel like he's done some consulting on things
okay.
recently.
I think he did
Final
help out
Fantasy,
with
like
Final
Final
Fantasy
Fantasy
7.
14 related stuff, or um, sorry to interrupt though. Mistwalker did make a few games in the 2010s. They made Terra Battle, which I believe was a mobile RPG.
Okay.
It's like a tactical RPG of sorts. They also made The Last Story, which was
Oh, that's right. Yep.
on the Wii. It was one of those. What did they call it? Like the Rainfall games. Like there were three RPGs on the Wii that people wanted to be localized and bring over to the US. So it was The Last Story. It was where can I find this real quick? Xenoblade?
I know
Was
that
Xenoblade
sounds
one
right.
of them?
People fought to get that one brought over because it wasn't initially going to happen.
And then is it like Pandora's Tower?
Oh, and that's ringing a bell. That one, Last Story I never played, in Pandora's Tower, if that's what it's called. That's one that I have just a something fired in my brain when you said it, but that's as far as we got.
Yeah. I'm gonna look this up real quick. I'm gonna do some quick edits later.
Okay. I'll drop this next nugget here. Something that I'm interested in grabbing at some point. There's actually a novelization that was created for Final Fantasy 1, 2, and 3, all
Oh,
in one volume, called Final Fantasy 1, 2, and 3: Memory of Heroes, and I believe it was fully translated to English. Um, but I thought that was some additional radness for the game.
yeah,
I
that's
think
awesome.
that's about. I mean, there's we could go on and on with Final
Yeah,
Fantasy stuff.
yeah, and
Uh,
yeah, Final Fantasy is one of those games that we could talk for multiple episodes about
yeah,
and get like super deep in, um, which we may at some point.
yeah.
Um, I guess I'd like to hear from our listeners. How would you guys like to see us covering games with multiple versions like this? Like we're pretty much settled on if it's close enough to the original, cover all of those games together. But if it's something like Final Fantasy VII and the Seven remake, they're very different games,
Yeah. Yep.
and I'm sure Chris and I would want to cover those separately.
Yeah. Us covering. Again, it's we desperately don't want to devalue the work that goes into remasters and
Right.
uprising graphics and actually giving a fresh paint of shiny coat of paint to as has happened over and over and over again with Final Fantasy. Um, but those discussions can't really be had without covering the main game. That's so we're at a little bit of a crossroads with that. So we'd love to get your feedback on that. But I think for now, unless you have anything else you'd like to throw out about Final Fantasy, I know you were looking for something. Did you find what you were looking for?
Yeah, it was called Operation Rainfall. Um, was that was a fan campaign to try to get like 3 Japanese exclusive Wii games over to the U.S. or over to or just localized out of Japan.
And they got
It
one or
was
two.
it was Xenoblade Chronicles. It was The Last Story, and it was Pandora's Tower.
Did all three of
So
them make
all
it?
three of them made it
Oh, okay.
eventually. Pandora's Tower, I think, was the latest one,
Okay.
and that didn't come out in North America until April 16th, 2013. It was originally released in 2011 in Japan, so
Well, that's not too bad.
not too bad. Xenoblade was before that, and The Last Story was in 2012 here. So
Okay.
yeah, it's kind of cool to see fan campaigns working that well
Yeah.
because all three of those games came out here were pretty well regarded. I think
Yeah.
Pandora's Tower was a little bit less so than the other two, but
Well, yeah, Xenoblade especially. Like, I mean, that game has a tremendous following. I actually just played the definitive edition all the way through on my Twitch channel a couple months ago. That was my first
yeah,
experience with it.
it's great.
Yeah,
It's a lot of fun.
it was a fine video game.
Why that's why Nintendo's working with that monolith
That's right.
all over the place. Yeah, and I guess this might be a very light segue to our final game of today. Um, Talking about multiple versions of a game and covering them in such a way. This final game is a NEOGEO Pocket Color game.
You're
which
also
is
forgetting to comment on the very important fact that it also has two Fs in its name.
it does. It actually has three. Fatal Fury First Contact for the Neo Geo Pocket Color. This is a not a port, but it's a reimagining of Real Bout Fatal Fury 2, which is a fighting game that came out on Neo Geo hardware, I guess, because Neo Geo stuff is all arcade ready hardware, I believe, for
Well,
like
this is
the home consoles. Not the Pocket Color. The Pocket Color is them trying to bring an arcade experience to handhelds. Um, this is most akin to, I almost say, almost like a Game Gear. A little bit nicer visuals than a Game Boy. Uh, also in color, like the name says, but also just running at a smoother frame rate than other handhelds. And that's the first thing that stands out to me with this version of Fatal Fury is it actually runs like a typical fighting game. Like it doesn't have the weird. It doesn't have a not all of them, but it has some drawbacks of being a portable game compared to like a full arcade release or like a fighting game that you'd see on like PS1 or later. But it seems like it's running at a decent frame rate. Uh, it feels like you actually have options when you're playing it.
So
Um,
I have as much as I talked or spoke when we were talking about Final Fantasy,
yeah,
I'll be talking that much in the opposite direction for Fatal Fury. I don't know anything about this game. I don't know anything really about fighting games. I mean, I know
sure,
what's widely available. I don't know anything about the Neo Geo Pocket Color. I found a couple things, but yeah, this is going to be kind of your party
sure.
to
And I don't know how much I actually have to talk about this, but Matt, I was not able to play uh, Fatal Fury First Contract. That's a completely different game.
business.
Um, it's just a lawyer sim. Barry Bogard shows up with Phoenix Wright, looking to sign some contracts.
The
Um,
Terry Bogard thing, that is one thing that I didn't know what series of games that he was from, but I knew that he was a character that was in Smash.
yeah, so
There we go.
Terry Bogard comes back all the way from Fatal Fury.
Huh.
He's the main character of Fatal Fury, which in turn has wrapped itself into the King of Fighters series, which is kind of SNK's greatest hits fighting game. It's their Smash Brothers. Everybody is here, uh, but
Oh, I guess we should call out this game is developed by SNK and
yes,
is it Yumi Kobo? Two developers I have listed here, and then also published by SNK of America, released in 1999. It is obviously a fighting game for the Neo Geo Pocket Color.
yes, that is correct. Um, every all the characters are chibi versions of their usual sprites to fit nicely on a 2.5 inch color screen.
That
Uh,
was one thing. This is also the first time I've ever seen in Neo Geo. The guy, it wasn't just the screen grab. It was a camera of him holding the Neo Geo and playing it. And every time it like his thumbs would show up, I thought to myself like, if he just moved both his thumbs up, he would cover the entire screen. I couldn't
yeah,
believe how tiny that screen was.
it's small. So they have other versions of the Pocket Color fighting or just Pocket Color games in general on the Switch. And they have an image of the Pocket Color on the Switch screen, and then the game running within an accurately sized window, so you can kind of see what that thing looks like. And I believe the touch controls actually work. So like there's an analog stick. I think it's actually a real analog stick on that thing, and then like an A and a B button,
Huh.
which for fighting games doesn't work out super well. Um, I'm more akin to fighting games with at least 4 buttons. So you have multiple like punches or kicks, or
Mhm.
a punch, a kick, a special, and like a guard or a, a throw. But with this, you're more reliant on your special move options. So you're down to forward punches, you're down to back kicks. You know, like your fireballs, your shoryukens. If we're if we're using Street Fighter terms,
That's actually that's a good point. I don't know if I've played just a two-button fighting game since the original Mortal Kombat. Was that did that come out on NES? No, it
no,
didn't.
no, it did not.
It never.
They did have the original Street Fighter on there, I believe.
That's yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so trying that out was interesting. I'm sure it actually plays really well. Like it's very responsive. I feel like you just need to learn the moves like any other fighting game. You want to be comfortable with the characters that you're playing and the moves that they can throw out. Know what your options are. Um, but I think like as a portable fighting game, it's probably one of the better playing ones. Oh, I should clarify. I think I was trying to get there before, but I never did. I downloaded Switch, uh, the Switch version of King of Fighters R2, which has like the same graphical layout, like the same character models. I think they play pretty similar from videos that I've watched of First Contact. So I feel like I could compare them pretty easily, just for the little bit that I played of King of Fighters R2. Um, but like I've tried playing like Mortal Kombat on the Game Boy Advance, and it sucks. Like I've tried playing Street Fighter games on portable systems, and they don't work well. They're always slower. There's always some sort of limitation. With this, it feels more like an SNK fighting game. Like the DNA is there, and I think that's pretty impressive for a game that came out in 1999 on a 2.5 inch gaming screen. Um,
It you touched on it a couple times, but again, you have a little bit more of a exposure to the fighting games than I do.
sure.
But from my perspective, what I did see of the gameplay that I did watch, you're right. It looked like a remarkably smooth experience
Mhm.
for something that was running on handheld on a console that what I was watching did not have a backlight, so you had to play it in a well lit area. But
Yeah.
it popped like it looked good for
It
what
looks
I
nice.
was watching.
It looks like a tiny arcade machine,
Yeah,
like a little tiny arcade screen. Um, like at least playing like that King of Fighters game. Once again, did not play this game specifically, but like I could select a character and start trying to throw out some moves that I might know from other fighting games, and like, oh, this is like a some sort of like charging fire fist. This is my Shoryuken variant. This is my fireball. Um, you could play around with those stick motions and be able to actually like land something. Like all the tools seem to be there. It's just in a smaller package, which is neat. Speaking of a smaller package, this game does like the game that it's based on, Real About Fatal Fury 2, has about twice as many characters as this version does. So this version of the game has 12 characters, um, and they actually added an additional character that's only available in Versus named Lao. I think this is the only game that Lao's actually playable in. Out of all the King of Fighters games, all the Fatal Furies, the Garo Mark of the Wolves, uh, this is the only SNK game that Lao is playable in, which is weird.
boy, his
Um,
he'll have to have a word with his agent. That did
right.
not work
No,
out for him.
So the only other times that Lao actually shows up are like in the intro video for Fatal Fury 2, or in some like endings for characters in like arcade modes for like some King of Fighters games. But that's it. Which is very odd, and considering King of Fighters is usually like, all right, we have what, like close to 50 characters, build a team of 3, um, and then fight against other teams of 3, like that they haven't squeezed that character in yet since then is it's a little bit mind-boggling to me.
All right. Well,
Yeah, I really don't have much more about this. If you're interested in the Pocket Color, there are ways of playing some of those games on the Switch. I would suggest you do it if you're interested in how arcade experiences are translated to a portable platform. I think they do it very well, or at least as well as you can hope for a machine that's contemporary to the Game Boy.
yeah, for this game specifically, you might have a little bit of trouble doing it, but if you can
Yeah,
get your hands on a NEOGEO Pocket Color, I did find a physical copy on Amazon of this game for $32.34, so it is out there.
which isn't bad. I did see there was some marketing material for this game that had it MSRP for $35 back in
Oh,
1999.
okay.
Mm-hmm. So
So there you
giving a
go.
little
There
bit
are
of
ways.
a discount. Also considering for inflation, it's a much better deal.
Heck yeah. So if it's been on your list since 1999, now's the time.
There it is. Pick
Um,
up your Pocket Color and pick up this game for $35.
well, John, that's all 5 games.
That is, wow, another week.
Yeah, when we finish our 5 games, we like to rank our 5 games.
That's true. We do.
Which ones we'd like to play? Let's do let's go reverse order. Let's add some tension. Let's add some drama to this. So, John, what is your number 5 game on this week's list?
Number 5 game. It's probably Mercury Race.
Okay.
I don't think I want to play much more Mercury Race.
Okay. What do you got for
I got
4?
the gist of it in like 15
Sorry.
minutes, and I don't feel like I'm not. I don't think I'm going to get much more out of it. So,
Okay.
mhm. How about you?
Perfect.
What's your number 5?
My number 5 is probably going to be Fatal Fury First Contact.
Okay.
Just my relative disinterest in fighting games overall.
You should play King of Fighters 13 or 14. Um, they're excellent fighting games. They're on Steam. If you ever see one in like a bundle or something, if you wouldn't buy it normally, but there are other things there that you do want to play, pick it up.
Actually, I have. I mean,
Give it a
I
shot.
probably do have it though, like because with Twitch Prime, they had an SNK collection of like
Oh
20 games for the longest time. I
yeah,
probably do.
there's a bunch of those games are in there. I think like Garo is in there, which is a sequel to the Fatal Fury
Okay.
games. Uh, yes, we should talk about that later. Yeah, Twitch had those games. I think Epic Games Store had like the Samurai Showdown collection as like one of their free games for a bit. Also an SNK joint. So
Yeah. Yeah, and
yeah,
those Twitch ones are like free, like in perpetuity. Like they've been free forever. So if you are a Twitch Prime member and these this kind of thing interests you, uh, check out your free game offerings. John, what's your number 4?
number 4 is probably first contact.
Okay.
Mainly because there are other fighting games out there that I'd rather play. I think it's really cool that they can make a competent fighter on an older handheld platform, but I mean, I think I'd rather play King of Fighters than Fatal Fury.
Okay.
What's your number 4?
My 4 is going to be Mercury Race. So we're just going to flip flop our 4 and 5.
Sure. Yes.
And just for the record, I have as much interest in playing Mercury Race as I do Fatal Fury. But the
Yep.
fact that it's a racing game, it just speaks to me better. I'm a
Okay.
little
Yeah.
bit bigger into
That's fair.
racing games.
Fair.
So,
My number 3 is going to be Tomb Raider Underworld. Just
okay.
gonna throw that right there in the middle. There are better Tomb Raider games. I've played them. I think getting the synopsis of what the story does is fine with me. I
And
don't really need to play any more of it, I
yeah,
think.
and you know what? I'm right there with you. That's actually my number 3 as well. I played halfway through the first level. I thought it was fine. Um, but like you said, you hit it kind of right on the head.
Yep.
The 2013 version of this and the two sequels that followed exist. Um, I don't think there's really much of a reason to go back and play Underworld.
Exactly. I'm sure we have the same twos and ones. Two for me is going to be Football Tactics and Glory, um, which is the surprise of this week. I really do want to try out more of this. There's a lot of cool stuff that it's doing, lots of cool customizations. If you want to make your own teams, your own players, you can upload your own logos or flags for countries. You can rearrange entire teams and leagues and play through stuff. Build your characters and like spec out their talent trees and figure out who's going to be the fan favorite to give them more money. And there's so much going on in a game that I felt like there was going to be nothing going on with it. I thought it was going to be a weird cheap cash in for soccer fans, but it seems, as someone who's outside of the soccer fandom for the most part, I like soccer enough, but I'm not following it. I'm not watching the Premier League. Um, I feel like there's enough there for me to be interested in this game.
Yeah, and it's you're right. That's my number 2 as well.
Yep.
Even the developers, like they coined, they wrote the description and they said, "What if I'm not a fan of soccer? That's okay. It actually you don't have to be a fan of soccer to enjoy this game." And I actually agree with that. If we were to if we were to put our top 5 together based on zero research, just game title alone,
Yep.
Fatal Fury and Football Tactics and Glory are tied for bottom of the list.
Sure.
I wouldn't have guessed Football Tactics and Glory moves as number 2 on this list. I was impressed with what I played. Again, I don't know
And
if
it's like
I'll return
we
to
only
it.
played the demo of that. Like,
Sorry, say that again. You cut out a little bit.
we only played the demo of that.
Right. Yeah.
So
So it's a deeper than you'd expect game. If you're into tactical games, if you're into XCOM, if you're into sport management, if you
mhm.
play Madden and you get into franchise mode and stuff like that, there's a couple. There's some secret depth there. So,
Yeah,
and then
absolutely.
obviously your number 1 is Final Fantasy.
It is. It is Final Fantasy number one. Is it? So it's a game that I really should play through. It's one of those games that it's the top of the pile of shame. I love so many other games in the series. I should, as someone who respects and loves games as much as I do, should have that knowledge within me. I should finish that. I should play it. I do have that Vita version now of 1 and 2. That might be something that I play through in the near future.
Yeah, and as somebody who has, again, it's my shame too. I haven't beaten it yet, but as somebody who's made it deep into the game,
Yeah.
don't beat yourself up. I will say that.
I,
Um,
I I'm gonna make the wrong composition at the beginning.
well, and one of the cooler things about it, the reason I would recommend anybody play Final Fantasy, um, while I wouldn't start with it, I would put it toward the beginning of your list because one of the cool things about Final Fantasy is uncovering those iterations and seeing how the universes they don't connect, but the terminology that's I mean the battle structure, the terminology, the things discussed in Final Fantasy 1 make their way into the series. Like
Right.
it continues on with 3 and 4 where new things are added and 5 and 6 and then when you get to 7, 8, 9 like every version brings its own thing to carry forward for the rest of the franchise. And I think
Right.
it's really cool if you can go back and experience the original, the thing that got this train rolling. So those are some solid ranks. This is completely opposite of last week. Last week we were not even. I mean, we were completely off topic. We weren't even close. So
Yeah.
we've come together a little bit this week. So
Yeah. We absolutely have.
and I
Well,
think
when greatness is in front of you, you have to respect it. So
this is true. Yeah. But I think that wraps it up. I think that is a solid episode 2, a little shorter than last week's, which we were gunning for. But good discussion, really, really good talks. If you guys would like to join us in these discussions, if you have things that you want to contribute, then please send an email to pgshowinbox@gmail.com. Reach out to our Twitter at PG_show. Check out our Patreon, patreon.com/procedurally generated, and jump in the Discord. We have a Discord, which will be linked in the show notes below. Engage with us. Give us your thoughts. Give us your opinions. In a couple of weeks, I think I can go ahead and say this now, John. I'm going to say it. In a couple of weeks, we're going to have our first community vote.
Yeah,
you guys are going to be able
true.
to vote between 5 games that we will include on a podcast that comes around, I think, 2 weeks later. To give ourselves, we want to, if you're going to vote on it, we want to make sure we give ourselves a fair shake to do it justice. So that's going to be coming up here soon. We're recording this on Tuesday. Early access is out on Wednesday. Full podcast will be out on Thursday.
It'll be on our Patreon page. So anyone, is it $7 and higher gets the
early access?
Yes.
Yeah, I believe so. I believe that is how we set it up. We're still obviously figuring out
tiers.
We made them. Now it's committing them to memory.
Right. Exactly. We made them. We forgot about them. And then we're remembering them again right now.
That's
right here in front of you. We should probably thank some of these patrons. We have all the patrons that we had from last time.
We did, yes. I'll buzz through them real quick. I wanted to just confirm $7 gets you the early access, yes, and it also gets you access to the ad-free podcast.
Absolutely.
So in terms of our patrons, yes, we will thank the patrons that continue to support us. They weren't so turned off by the first podcast that they're like, nope, we're done. No, we've got
the second one.
Let me sort by tier so I don't confuse myself here. We've got Jody Morris and Mecha Sprite, our $25 supporters. We've got X-Chin at our gold to $15 tier. I guess Mecha Sprite and Jody are platinums. Sorry. Yeah. The Lone Wolf and Tori Glumac, $7 silver supporters. Aussie Gamer, John Carson.
Yep.
And our newest patron, Jason Daphnis.
Jason, thank you so much.
Much appreciated. They are our $3 bronze tier supporters.
I'll give Jason a free plug here. Please listen to Jason's podcast, Crossfade. It's part of the MinMax podcast network, as well as Trilove. It's a movie podcast that he does with a couple other folks, Harry Mackin, and they have a couple other co-hosts. I feel bad blanking on their names currently. Cody Neverson, I believe, is one of them. They were originally doing a podcast where they would go see movies at the Trilon Theater in Minneapolis. It's a small boutique theater that would play just obscure movies, and they would do reviews on movies every week movies that they saw at that theater.
That's awesome. So, that's really cool.
Yeah. I believe they've been keeping up with that over the course of the COVID era. So
nice. I think I met Jason last year at some point. So
it's great.
Yeah,
he's wonderful.
He's a good dude, along with every one of our supporters. So thank you guys so much for the support. And one last plea: please go to wherever you're listening to this. Leave us a review. It would mean the world to us. So we are putting a lot of time and effort into this. And we are proud of this. So we definitely want to see this continue to grow. We want to bring in some new listeners, some new viewers. Viewers is a strange term, but we have big plans. We'd love to start implementing things. Not yet. We're still finding our footing, like full disclosure, but when the time comes, we'd love to be able to start integrating some of the things that we have in mind. So please share this if you enjoy it. If you think somebody would enjoy this, let them know. All right, John, you have anything else?
No, I need to go throw out your Xbox.
I did bad.
Light it on fire and throw it down a garbage chute.
God, what a waste of your money since I haven't paid you for it yet.
Shoot.
Yep. Now you've got to commit to it.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
I guess I gotta go figure that out.
Send pictures, throw them in the Discord.
Great.
All right, guys, have a good week. We'll be back next time.
See y'all next week.